Good evening and welcome to Vacations for Canadians Cruise Chat on Wednesday evening. We're happy to have you here. I noticed on my calendar that we're 2 weeks away from the holidays, so we're hoping you've got some hot chocolate and a bit of time to relax and unwind with us while we talk a little bit about embarkation ports. This evening we have Luke who's going to talk to us about the different places you can embark on your cruise and a few tips and tricks along the way to help you get that first day underway very well and easy. He's got some pointers on what to expect when you show up at the cruise terminal and what the cruise lines are going to need from you and how you can get on that board on board speedy and ready to have your first beverage as soon as you possibly can. We do have opportunities for questions, so please do pop them in the chat. Let us know you're here as well. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions along the way about this topic or anything else, please just drop us a line and we'll get that answered throughout the presentation. Or if we don't answer it during the presentation, at the end, we have some time carved out for that as well. On the board, we've got Linda, who's behind the scenes. She's going to be the one who takes care of our big prize at the partway through our cruise chat. And we've got Luke, who's going to be one of our key presenters this evening. And we have Matt as well in his festive gear ready for the holidays, blinged out, which could be a little bit blinding there, Matt. So if you've got any questions for any of us, please, again, feel free to shoot those through. So we are Vacations for Canadians, and we have a large Facebook presence as well as websites, and we are all cruise enthusiasts, and we are here to help you find the perfect cruise vacation. So if you're not familiar with us, we're glad to have you on board. We invite you to join our Facebook page and take a look at the deals that we post on a daily basis. Or, of course, if you've got something special in mind, you can reach out to any of us advisors to help you find that perfect cruise. Over to you, Luke.
All right. Thanks, Karen. Embarkation port. Well, obviously, you can't go on a cruise without having to deal with an embarkation port because that's where the adventure starts. So tonight, what I'm going to do is walk you through my personal experience with regards to various embarkation points. Touch on maybe some things to keep in mind or what the process looks like as you're going to embark on your cruise. And then given the fact that we're Canadian, I'm going to walk you through the process of getting on a cruise in Vancouver as one of Canada's major cruise ports for the Alaska and some of the repositioning cruises that head towards Hawaii and Asia and Australia and so on. So as you can see, this is the picture of a celebrity ship here in Vancouver in the Canada Place in downtown Vancouver. So let's start off here. I've had the privilege over the years to cruise from various ports. I'm going to touch on 4 of the major ones that I've actually cruised on multiple times. So in our top left here, we have Cape Liberty, New Jersey, one of Royal Caribbean's cruise port, and I think this one here was Anthem of the Seas that used to sail out of Cape Liberty, and now we have Odyssey to Sea sailing from there. In the top right-hand corner, there is a very small port in Baltimore, Maryland, where there's cruise ships that leave there year-round as well. In this particular case, I happen to be sailing on Vision of the Seas back in October, so we actually boarded the ship on Halloween, which was actually pretty cool. Got to see people all dressed up. Very small port, very easy to get through. Bottom left, there's a Port of Vancouver again. You can see in the background there's Canada Place and the common flag or sails that they've replicated for the building itself. And then in the bottom right, we have the Port of Amsterdam. That one there is I wouldn't say it's a very busy port. They do get a lot of ships throughout the year, particularly for the Norway, British Isles, and the Iceland, Greenland cruises. It's a little harder to find, and I can give you some pointers on how to find it when you get into Amsterdam itself. All right, let's get started. Amsterdam. So let's start off with Amsterdam. You'll notice here 2 different ships on 2 different days while we spent 5-6 days in Amsterdam prior to the cruise. It's a little harder to find because it's not like some of the ports where you get to see the big signs, the big buildings, and they're really focused around the building itself is actually a port building. In this particular case, it's a mix of a hotel, an apartment building. To the, I guess it would be to the east of it, would be attached to it is a whole bunch of apartment buildings, 4 or 5 stories, condos, all kinds of stuff. So it's a bit harder to find. Really nice port though, really nice building once you're in. Very straightforward process. And if you're looking at figuring out where it is in conjunction to Amsterdam itself, so when you're actually facing the central train station, it would actually be to your right, and it's probably a 5 to 10 minute walk, and it's easily accessible. What you don't see in the picture here, well, you actually see it in the bottom picture. There's Viking and other river cruise lines actually sail from there as well. And while we were in Amsterdam, we noticed that they had like 3 or 4 river cruises. And every day we'd actually walk back to downtown Amsterdam. You could see that they were moving and they were gone, or the new ones came in and so on. So it's a really nice port. One of the things I want to touch on as well is obviously when you get to cruise from an actual embarkation point or embarkation port, this is where the memories and the adventure begins. Personally, I prefer to go into a cruise port or embarkation port a couple of days early. In the case of Amsterdam, because I had never been to Amsterdam before, we actually went a week early, and we were able to do the river cruises and walk around. And actually, we rented bicycles and did a bicycle tour around Amsterdam. And the picture here on the right, where it's Amsterbike, that bike rental place is actually in the same building that the cruise port, the embarkation port is. It's actually to the left of that, or to the right of that picture. You walk maybe about 50 feet, and that's the door entrance to the actual to board the ship. Once you board the ship and you're heading out, one of the things that caught my attention, because Amsterdam and Netherlands have a unique landscape or concept where they have dikes around the country, because most of Amsterdam would be underwater if it wasn't for the dikes that they put around certain parts of the Netherlands. And the interesting thing here in the bottom picture there, you'll see a set of locks. So you leave the port, it's probably about an hour and a half from the time you leave the port of Amsterdam to head towards open waters, and there's actually a lock, and it's actually pretty cool. It was at night, there was a sunset, the skies were absolutely beautiful, and it's an experience that if you haven't sailed on a cruise ship where you're actually going through locks without going to places like Panama Canal and all those places, if you go to Amsterdam, you leave the port, you're going through a lock to get out to go do your cruise from Amsterdam itself, and obviously you do that same lock coming back in. Again, Amsterdam, beautiful city. So regardless of what port you go to, particularly Amsterdam for us, we spent 6 or 7 days there, and we took advantage of Amsterdam itself. All right, and then let's move on to our next one, Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale, is one of the busiest ports in Florida. Next to Cape Canaveral, Miami, Tampa has a smaller port. These are all big ports in Florida. I've sailed out of Miami. I've sailed out of Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale is my preference when I do sail, just because I've done the Miami port where you go to Miami Beach and the Art Deco community, but to me, Fort Lauderdale just has that extra layer water taxis and that kind of stuff. And you'll notice here that in the bottom left-hand picture, there's an open bridge to the south of that, I guess, or to the east of that. That's where there's a huge marina, there's water taxis, there's all kinds of stuff. And then if you look further into the picture, this is actually the port where all the cruise ships sail from. And there's Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, Princess, all of America, they all sail from Fort Lauderdale. So Fort Lauderdale, excellent experience. I actually took a picture. So where you saw that flip bridge, or that bridge that opens up, just beside it, if you were to walk like 5 minutes, huge marina, and multi-million-dollar yachts are found in that marina, which is it opens up to the water channels and canals where many very famous people have houses that back onto the canals and whatever else. And this was a yacht. It had to be like 300-400 feet long, and probably a multi-million-dollar yacht. Again, I didn't get a lot of pictures from the port of Fort Lauderdale. I've been there too many times, and I was sidetracked on taking pictures of other things. But our experience sailing out of Fort Lauderdale has been outstanding. And again, a fairly easy port to walk through. The process is pretty straightforward. I'll touch on that a little bit later in my presentation. I just wanted to kind of give you a high-level description of each of the ports and things that you could actually do in those embarkation ports. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Cape Liberty. I've had the privilege of sailing out of Cape Liberty probably close to a half dozen times now. I live just south of Ottawa, so for me, it's a 6.5 hour drive. I drive to the port. I save myself, the whole flight thing. And you'll notice here that we have the famous pandemic masks that we all had to wear. This picture here was taken in December 2021, a couple of months after the cruise industry reopened after the pandemic, and we had to wear masks in any public settings. This was during the embarkation, so we had to wear masks while we were embarking the ship. Various events around the ship, we had to wear a mask. And the good news is that masks are no longer mandatory on ships, and we're pretty well back to normal. The benefit from some of these things is that obviously things that they've put in place, security protections and processes and procedures that they do on ships today, has allowed us to cruise and limit the amount of bacteria and other things that are somewhat contagious to out of our hands. Anyway, so that's a different discussion. Cape Liberty, New Jersey is basically across the river from New York City. And in theory, you could literally go and spend a couple of weeks in New York City. In our case, we were able to spend 4 or 5 days. The bottom picture here, you'll notice that you can see New York City across the way. This is basically on our balcony on Anthem of the Seas, just looking over across the waterway, and you can see the whole island of Manhattan. We visited places like Music City Hall, Grand Central Station, and the 9/11 Memorial, which is the building here on the right. It's inside the I forget what the building is called, but it's a huge building memorial to the 9/11. And of course, New York City has a lot of things to do. And even if you sail out of New Jersey and you head to New York City, every single time you could visit different things. So again, embarkation ports are really cool. A lot of times they're in places and cities that allow you to do either pre-cruise or post-cruise activities. And it's worth to spend the time and see what they have to offer. Vancouver, touched on this a little earlier. It's part of Canada Place. They can usually accommodate 3 to 4 ships at a time during a debarkation, embarkation, or even a port stop, because there are ships that sail out of Seattle that they have Vancouver as a port stop. So it's not just an embarkation port, but it's also a port stop. This happens to be one side of the Canada place, but over on the other side, they can accommodate, I think, 2 or 3 ships versus on this side. I think they usually only try to accommodate 1. All right.
Luke, I'm just going to jump in for a second because we have 2 people asking about finding parking and how traffic is going into Cape Liberty. So Eleanor asks, how is it finding parking in Cape Liberty? And Donna says, how is traffic going into Cape Liberty? So a couple of questions there for you.
In my experience, the parking, well, I'll break it into 2 parts. One is the driving in and out of the port is actually fairly straightforward. Yes, there's usually a little bit of traffic when you get into, let me just go back to the picture here and I'll kind of explain it a little more. Let's go back right here. So to the left of the picture, so where you can see kind of like the parking lot here, this is basically the road that you actually drive by to go and kind of do the a roundabout, if you want, where you drop off your luggage and so on. And then to the left of that picture, there's 2 parking spots. There's 2 parking things where one's an indoor parking. It's a multi-level. I think it's 3 or 4 level parking. And another one is actually, you can see probably the edge here. If we were to zoom into that picture, is it's an outside parking. So you can just, you pay your parking fee for the week. You park your car. You basically just walk like a 2-minute walk with your luggage across the parking lot to the port itself. So in my experience, the where the bottleneck usually is, and most ports are the same thing, is only when you come past the ship a little bit and you get towards the front end of the ship. There's kind of like a U-turn area where you drop off your luggage, and that's basically the bottleneck that I've come across. Leaving, because people are leaving staggered, it's a non-issue. And even if we go back to when you first get to the port, because people are now staggered in terms of, you get an assigned time at 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11, right up to maybe an hour before the ship is about to leave. It allows less people to congest the whole area all at once, like you used to see back in, in the early to mid 2020s, because you weren't assigned a time. But COVID actually allowed the cruise industry to start separating people and giving them blocks of time to go. And so basically the traffic has actually been really good. I can't complain.
Luke, can I just jump in there talking about the parking for Cape Liberty?
Yeah, we've got a follow-up question there too.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I can address that as part of the answer as well. We have a hosted cruise for the Odyssey of the Seas sailing out of Cape Liberty in March. So I've actually done quite a bit of research on the parking for Cape Liberty in particular, because a lot of our guests want to stay at hotels that are nearby and then take, shuttles or Ubers or whatever to get themselves to the cruise port. And the hotel parking alone is like $20 a night. Whereas the parking that's right at the cruise port is $30 a night. But then your car is parked right there in that 4-level parking garage that Luke was talking about. Or there are parking lots that are in close proximity to the cruise port, similar to if anybody uses Park and Fly. There are parking lots that are right in close proximity to the cruise port in Cape Liberty, where you can park there for $15 a night. And then there's a shuttle that runs every 5 to 10 minutes out of the cruise port that takes you to those parking lots. So it's just called Park and Sail, similar to Park and Fly. And so if you're looking into parking, there are those lots that are in close proximity, or you can just park right at the cruise port in that 4-story garage for $30 a day. So there is ample parking options in that area. So you have the option of parking on site in close proximity or at your hotel. If you want to stay in Newark or something like that that's close by, then you can pay $20 at your hotel and then just take an Uber, because it's not a very far Uber from, say, Newark, which is where the closest airport would be, to get you to the cruise port.
And that's a valid point, because I think going back, we've actually tried all the three different ways of staying at a hotel, paying extra for the parking at the hotel. They shuttle you to the port, they shuttle you back, they come and pick you up because they know when the ship comes back. We've done the park and fly type parking lot where you pay, a lower fee than parking right at the port, where again, you either take a lift back to the parking lot or they offer a shuttle back and forth. But we've also parked at the port itself. So depending on your budget, depending on how convenient you want. For us, because we were driving home the last time we were there, we decided we were going to park at the port, because then you're 5 to 10 minutes to your car from getting off the ship. You get in your car and you leave and you go straight home, versus waiting for a shuttle and so on and so on. So it all depends on what you want based on budget. It can go anywhere between $10, $15 right up to $30 parking. Any other questions there, Linda, on the topic?
No. Oh, well, there is one question. I might as well get Ron's question out, because he did post it right at the beginning and I said we'd get to it. So we're going to pop that in there, even though it's not necessarily related to Embarkation. So he asked, he was just wondering if Celebrity Cruises will bring back the gratuities included in the fare, as we have seen it with other lines. Anyone have any insights?
I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon. I know it's been a popular question that we've been raising with our celebrity contacts, and I don't think, I don't expect that we're going to be seeing it anytime soon.
Okay. All right. Sorry, probably not the answer you wanted, but that is the answer we have, unfortunately.
All right, so let's Vancouver. So the Port of Vancouver, again, if you head a couple of days earlier, if you want to do a post-cruise stay in Vancouver, for us, our experience was we flew in from Ottawa to Vancouver. We stayed at the Red, got a note here, the Red Rock Casino, which is like 5 minutes from the airport. We basically paid, I think it was $5, got on the SkyTrain to the casino. At the casino, there's a SkyTrain drop-off right there. You walk through the parking garage, because it's just the way the building is set up. You stay in the hotel. If you want to travel to and from downtown Vancouver, you buy your day pass. I think at the time it was $7 or $12. I forget how much it was. You get on the SkyTrain, it's a day pass. You're about 25 minutes to 30 minutes to downtown Vancouver. You can visit downtown Vancouver. There's ample stuff to do. Rent a car, rent bicycles, and tour downtown. One of my favorite places that I discovered while in Vancouver, not for a cruise, but more for a personal vacation, was Granville Island. It's this little niche area underneath one of the bridges that crosses from North Vancouver to South Vancouver. And one of my favorite restaurants there is called the Sandbar. It's a really cool restaurant, outstanding service. Food is amazing. You get to sit by a window and look right there by the port, and just outstanding. Of course, we've sailed with some friends we've met on a cruise. They drove down from Pennsylvania and drove down to Canada. We flew together and did an Alaska cruise in August of last year. And you'll notice that my picture over on the left here, my wife is extremely happy, and I'm well, I'm focused on taking a picture, but also my experience going through the Port of Vancouver was not as expected, and that's why I want to touch on it earlier or later in this presentation to kind of set the stage that if ever you have to go through the Port of Vancouver, you'll know what to expect, what the process is, and then hopefully you won't have the look that I had when I was ready to board the ship, where I was a bit discouraged and a little frustrated. But anyways, the experience itself was amazing. And again, my looks is pretty well self-explanatory, but also I was focusing on taking a picture and trying to stare at the camera. So funny experience there. Embarkation 101. So, and I'd like to reach out to both Matt and Karen to maybe help me out through here with maybe their own experience in this particular case, if I miss anything or whatever. So prior to embarkation, you usually get, you get your passport in order, you get your, obviously you purchase your cruise fare, you pay your final deposit, you may purchase your excursions ahead of time, you pack your luggage, and you're ready to head to the port. One of the key things is to make sure you have the right documentation for the countries you go in. And I know that over the next couple of years, more and more countries are implementing some requirements around travel authorizations and that kind of stuff. So really focus on making sure you have that documentation. We can help you in determining where you're going to sail from, where you're going to sail to, and some of the requirements you require. So a lot of the pre-embarkation and things you need to do is, the making sure you have the right documentation, packing the right clothes for the cruise you're going on, and so on. Then, you head over to the port, and then you go through the whole port embarkation. Whether, like I said earlier, whether you go ahead of time, you spend some time discovering the city, the city of the embarkation port you're going to be sailing from. And you may, my recommendation is if you fly the day before, not the day of. A very strong recommendation on that, not to fly the day of, regardless of how close the airport is. And then you plan on getting to the port at a specific time. Now, many cruise lines, Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, I'm sure they all do now, is that you're assigned when you do your check-in process. So just to go back here, before you even get to the port, you have a check-in process, usually about 45 days prior to embarkation. It's kind of like a check-in for your flight, 24 hours, within 24 hours prior, whatever the term is. What the process is, you check into your flight, you take your pictures and all kinds of stuff and submit your passport information, as well as they'll assign you during that process a boarding time. So if your boarding time is 10 o'clock, they try to get you to not to get to the port too early. You can actually go after your assigned time, but the earliest you can go is your assigned time. So then let's say your assigned time is 11 o'clock, you show up to the port, 10, 15 minutes prior to that, that's not a big deal. You drop off your luggage. There's usually a luggage area where you drop off your luggage, because your luggage will usually have a luggage tag, and then they worry about taking your luggage and bringing it onto the ship, so you don't have to worry about luggage. So this is where the holiday really starts, where you check out, or check in, and you leave your luggage with them, and then you enter the building. So once you enter the building, the port itself, usually what you'll do is you'll go through some form of metal detector security, where it's typical, just like an airport. They're not as picky per se as they are at the airport, where you have to take off your shoes and hat and all kinds of stuff. It's more to make sure that you're not bringing in weapons, and you scan your backpack or whatever you're bringing with you, or some people will want to just come in with a carry-on bag or whatever they have, and then you basically stand in line. Your lineups are usually fairly short, because again, you're assigned time, and then you'll come up to assign a check-in person. Sometimes they're just standing there with an iPad or some device, things that they'll require from you is your passport and your boarding pass. So you will be given a boarding pass as part of your check-in process, where you can print them. Now they allow to have it on a mobile device. So if you're going with Celebrity or Royal Caribbean, for instance, it's actually right there on your phone, and they scan your boarding pass to make sure you've been assigned to you're at the right port, right ship, so on and so on. They validate your passport, and then once you're done that, then you walk towards the ship itself. And of course, there's my lovely wife, Vicky, walking the gangplank or the gangway to get on the ship. And usually she does a little dance just before she steps off right onto the ship, because she gets all excited. And yeah, so that's bottom line here. This is basically the embarkation process when arriving at a given port. I don't know if Karen or maybe Matt would like to add to this based on their experience, or anything I may have missed. Feel free to share your information.
I would just add, so I think you've got a lot of great information there. I would just add that if you do end up getting a later embarkation time, don't worry about it. I used to always try to be like the first on board, but actually it's kind of nice to go a little bit later, because there's not the big massive crowds, and then you can go for a nice lunch in the dining room and just have a kind of a bit of a more stress-free kind of afternoon, because that first day can feel a bit chaotic, just because everybody's getting on board around the same time, and they're all rushing to the buffet to get their food, and they're kind of homeless until their cabins are ready, which sometimes could be a couple of hours, usually not ready until about 2 o'clock. So you might be carrying around your hand luggage, depending upon if you're able to drop that off at your stateroom or not. So even if you do get a little bit of a later time, it's actually quite nice. You just basically walk on the ship at that point in time, and like I said, grab yourself a nice lunch in the dining room and start your vacation off in a kind of a relaxed, stress-free way.
And what I'll just say is, I know that Luke gave you a lot of information there on the embarkation and all the different things to take into consideration. The good thing about working with an agency like Vacations for Canadians is that when you make a reservation with us, as soon as you make that reservation, our support services team are going to send you with your invoice a know before you go. So you are going to get all of that information on embarkation and all of the things that you need to consider when you make your reservation. If you don't find it in that email, you can just go on our website. Right on our website, if you go on the top tabs where it says extras, the very last one that says clients, that's for you. If you click on clients, the know before you go for every cruise line is right on our website. So all of that crucial information that you're going to want to know before you go is right there available for you any given time to just check out on our website. Or you have us, you have your cruise specialist with Vacations for Canadians. You can always reach out to us if you have any questions, just like these ones about parking at some of these cruise ports that you're going to be embarking from. We can help you out with them, especially the ones that are further away from the major cities that you might be flying into, because while we're talking about some of these ones where the cruise port is pretty close proximity to the major city or the airports that you would be flying into, there are some of them that are quite a distance away. And so we can help you out with accommodations. We can help you out with transportation for transfers. All of those considerations are what we are here for.
Excellent. Thanks, Karen and Matt. So just to summarize here is basically, prepare. You have your documentation, kind of like what Matt and Karen said as well. You get to the port, you have your assigned time. It becomes a more relaxing, because all the legwork you've spent getting ready for it. The embarkation process itself, once you walk into the building to the time you walk onto the ship, compare it to maybe flying, but very much simplified. So it's a quick security you go through security, empty your pockets, you go through security. Then you have a check-in person that just basically matches your passport to your boarding pass to their system, and then you're given the green light. You walk on the ship. And in my experience, from the time I walk into the building, it could be as quick as 10 minutes, as it could be a little longer. And depending on the ports you're in, sometimes, if the ship came in late, then, there's a bit of a waiting time. But in my experience, on average, is about, 10 to 15 minutes to about 30 minutes is actually the processing window. So with that being said, I think I'll move on to our next part here, the Port of Vancouver. Now, my first experience with the Port of Vancouver was a bit challenging and a bit stressful. And the reason why is because the Port of Vancouver, for the most part, is you'll notice that when you're actually facing Canada Place, there's a parking garage, and that parking garage goes down multiple levels. But if you go down one level, all the tour buses that are either picking people up to take them to airports or take them to specific things, or it was part of a group cruise or whatever it may have been. And also the buses that come in that are now bringing in new passengers from airports and other locations are underground, and they're all lined up. To get into the port, at least in my experience, maybe it's different on maybe some other people have experienced different things, but you'll notice where I circled it, there's there's a ramp to go down for a vehicle, and there's a ramp to come up. To the left of that, there's a small, I'll call it a walkway ramp that goes down into the basement of the first level basement of the actual building. And the first experience I had was people are trying to leave the port with their luggage, and you're trying to go down the same ramp that's probably the width of your hallway in your house, which is not very wide. And so you go down the building, and basically I called it going down into the dungeon, because it feels like you're going, it's not your typical port where it's ground level, lots of lights, you can see outside, or it's modern buildings. So you go down this ramp and you walk past all of these tour buses while people are scrambling, going back and forth and trying to find where they're going because they just got off the ship. And you walk in through a doorway, and luckily enough, when we got there's a lady that said, "Are you with Royal Caribbean?" Celebrity in Holland America was there that day. When we told her it was Royal Caribbean, she said, "Okay, well, you have to take this elevator." So now you cram yourself in an elevator with other people, and it takes you down one more floor further down into the dungeon, if you want to kind of think of it in a funny way. I think it's funny now, but it wasn't funny that day. And then you walk down across this parking garage to where you drop off your luggage. And so you drop off your luggage, and then you go past that. You take another elevator back to the main floor, which is where this picture on the right that we actually took, this is where we realized, oh, wait, this is our check-in spot. We walked into this big room, and again, now we were greeted, gone through security, and then, you go and you check in, so you hand in your passport, your boarding pass, and so on. And then because the ship wasn't quite ready, or we had to go into a waiting room, and it was just a bunch of chairs. You sat there. I think we were there maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. And then we were escorted row by row to get on the ship. So, and then once we got back, we had the reverse experience where we're trying to get out of the building with our suitcase, and people are trying to come down the ramp. And anyways, it turns into that big chaos. A word of advice: just take a deep breath, go down the ramp, think about the cruise itself and the whole experience of going on a cruise. And just know that you go down the ramp, go past all the buses, you're going to take an elevator down one floor to drop off your luggage. You're going to take an elevator back up to a different part of the building. And then, this is where you go through the boarding process itself with passports and so on. And then you'll eventually make it onto the ship. Just take a deep breath. I've done it once now, so I know what to expect the next time, but just take some patience, relax, know that, people are leaving frustrated because their cruise is over. You're trying to get in there because you're excited for your cruise, but just take a deep breath, and it'll work out in the end. But it's probably the only port that I ever experienced where it was a bit challenging from the time you get to the port to get in, go through the process, and leave. Like I said on the previous slide, 10, 15 minutes, I was in and out. This one here was more probably about an hour end to end. So just understand that there is that challenge. But then again, we had a fantastic cruise to Alaska, had an amazing experience. And I laugh at it now, a little frustrated that day, but just bear in mind that Vancouver might be a little bit challenging.
So Luke, we have a question on here, and we have a few comments too. So Lori said she found the Port of Vancouver the most unorganized and stressful port she's ever sailed from. So people are definitely having the same feelings as you. Eleanor said not to forget the microbreweries on Granville Island. So if you're there early.
Yes.
And Lori said, imagine traveling with your parents that are supposed to have a wheelchair assist in Vancouver. So just something to be cognizant of, I guess, if you're traveling with someone who needs some assistance.
I think on that note, with regards to the wheelchair, I think if you show up with a wheelchair, they do bring you into the building through another set of doors on the main floor around, and then they basically take you to an elevator, and they take you down to the lower level to go through the boarding process. So no, wheelchairs, you don't have to worry about going down the ramp or up on their way up. They will make sure that you get in there. There's usually somebody standing there right at the top and says, "Oh, are you coming here for a cruise?" And then they sort people out based on where they're going. So they're pretty good at it from that perspective.
Okay. Eleanor also said if taking a taxi, they usually are held up due to only being let in so many at a time down the ramp. So also think about that. And then Jackie is asking, so our question here, Jackie said, how do we get our boarding pass with the mail strike if it is still on February departure?
Typically boarding passes, if it's with Royal Caribbean or Celebrity, I think it's 29 days prior to boarding, you will get an email with your your e-pass or e-boarding book, and it has basically all the information, has your boarding passes, your luggage tags, and all that kind of stuff. So, so most of it now is all electronic. There's no mailing of anything.
Anybody else have anything to add to that? Karen, Matt?
Yeah, that's pretty common for all the cruise lines that the e-tickets are electronic, and you don't have to worry about them coming in the mail. That is all a thing of the past. These are electronic documents that are emailed to you by the cruise line. Virgin is one that stands out that doesn't have e-tickets, so you will not get anything in the mail like luggage tags or anything like that. You just use the app, and that is have all your boarding information right on your mobile device that you're carrying in your pocket, so you don't have to worry about that when you're boarding.
Great. And Lori said, just in comment to her earlier comment, that no wheelchairs were available, even though Matt, our wonderful Matt here, had arranged for it. So and that's an unfortunate thing. I'm sure Matt was all over that, trying to help out. But again, something to be cognizant of when you're traveling through Vancouver, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on the port. Some of them are actually really, really good. I know the port of Baltimore is very small. That port there, I guess we were getting on Vision of the Seas, and it's kind of off season a little bit at the end of October, early November. And there was a lot of wheelchairs, and some of them were from various cruise lines, and some of them were from the port, because you can actually see the logo in the back of the chairs. But Vancouver, all I know from Vancouver is if you have mobility issues or mobility challenges, wheelchairs, walkers, that kind of stuff, they know that that ramp can actually be fairly steep. And there is a workaround where they'll send you in through the building more on a level ground so that you don't have to worry about stairs and that ramp going down into the parking garage. All right. Any more questions or comments, Linda?
No, I think that is it for right now. But if you do have more comments or questions, feel free to drop those in the comments.
So basically, fundamentally is, the boarding process should be fairly straightforward. It should be part of your experience should be uneventful and an easy process. My recommendation is to plan a few days ahead, a few days after embarking or disembarking from the ship, to take advantage of some of the ports, particularly for me, Amsterdam. I'm glad I spent a week prior to boarding the ship. Got an amazing experience. I've done the same thing with Fort Lauderdale, where we usually go a couple of days early. But at the end of the day, the embarkation process is kind of like where you are done planning, and this is where you start disconnecting from regular life, and you board the ship, and you can head to a bar, grab yourself a drink, walk around the ship, and start enjoying your cruise. And the embarkation process is, maybe, like I said, in my experience, other than Vancouver, it's a 15-20 minute process. You get through it. It's painless, and then you get the privilege of walking down the gangway onto the ship and put your first foot onto the ship, and that's where your vacation starts. Or your cruise vacation starts. So that's it for me. And again, if you guys have any questions along the way here as we transition to our panel for question and answer, feel free to put your comments in the comment section, and we'll tackle those as they come in. So back to you, Karen.
I think it's our giveaway time. So Linda, what have you got lined up for us tonight?
I do. I have a Vacations for Canadians mouse pad. So if you would like to win the mouse pad, just drop a comment and let us know what your favorite port is to embark from. So we'll watch the comments for that. First comment wins a VFC mouse pad, and I believe from here we're going to move on to our Ask Us Anything panel, and we actually have some questions. So we have a question from Lori. I'm going to pop that. Whoops. Oh, and Lori is also our winner. She said Amsterdam is her favorite port. So
good choice.
I agree.
All right. So the first question is: anyone sail out of the new port of Ravenna, which replaced Venice? Has anyone on the panel?
No, we sailed out of Chioggia when we were in Venice, so the other side of it. So Ravenna is a couple hours away, so something you'd want to consider your transportation needs to get there. You can take a train, you can take a bus. There's a few ways to get there, but do know that it's not just right next door, as a lot of your ports are. So plan for that.
Anyone else? Matt, Luke, either one of you have anything to add to that question?
No, all I know is that, plan ahead, because there is a train or something to get you from one location to the other. And there's a bit of logistics, but again, reach out to us and we'll...
Yeah, I've been to Trieste and I've been to Venice, but I haven't been down to that southern point.
All right. So just if you do have any comments, please feel free to put them in the comment section. And you've got Matt, Karen, and Luke all here, great travel advisors, well-versed in cruising, who will answer any of your cruising questions. But while we wait for your questions, I'm going to ask you guys, because it's been a busy month and everybody's, now that it's a little colder, everybody is thinking about vacationing again because they want to get away from the cold and the snow. So what are some of the top cruise destinations and itineraries that have been most popular with your clients lately? So maybe we'll start with Matt on that one.
So one that I'm getting a lot of, surprisingly, is Asia. So anything Asia related, whether it's Vietnam and Thailand, whether it be Japan, those seem to be the very popular ones. And they are definitely following the trends of where we're seeing limited inventory. So it's great that with some of the cruise lines, they're already getting into 2026, 2027 itineraries for some of these Asian destinations, because that is how popular they are. A lot of the 2026 ones are already selling out. So it's great that 2027 has come out now and we can start grabbing group space for that, because it is that popular of an option right now.
Luke?
I think for me, lately, I think now that we're starting to experience snow and that kind of stuff, for some odd reason, people are looking to go to Alaska.
Not what I was expecting.
No, actually, you know what? I think people realize that, it's probably warmer in Alaska in the summer than it is here in Canada in the winter. So, no, I think for me, there's been an influx of questions around Alaska, different ports to sail from, looking for recommendations on ports to stop in, different ports. I've had two clients ask me to find them a cruise that goes specifically to Skagway. For some, Ketchikan and Juneau are your typical ones, but these ones here were Skagway, and so yeah, Alaska for me, anyways.
And Karen?
I'm finding those two A's are the same ones that I'm really getting a lot of popular in Asia and Alaska, but I'm also finding a lot of people are planning their summer vacations and they're looking to go to the Mediterranean. So they're thinking Greece, they're thinking about Italy, they're thinking about Spain, they're thinking about those areas too. So if you've already got your winter vacation plan, they're starting to think about summertime travel. So a lot of those requests as well.
Amazing. Okay, so we do have we have a question. So we'll start with that one. So Donna asks, what is the port like in Athens, and is it very far from the city center?
I can answer that one. I was there this summer. So it's not terribly far from the city center. So you can grab a shuttle or a tour, something like that, which you probably would want to do because Athens is quite spread out. So you do want to make sure you're hitting all those popular spots and seeing the great tourist attractions while you're there. But it's just very much like any other. It's not walking distance though into the main city by any means. You definitely need to take some sort of transportation, either a shuttle or a taxi, or a tour rather.
Great.
And maybe the other thing.
I was just there this past October when we did our hosted with Virgin. Sorry. I was just there when we did our hosted cruise with Virgin in October. We ended in Athens, and that's where we were piling out 118 of our guests all at the same time. Some were going on to a back-to-back, so they were sailing on from Athens. But for the rest of us that were all piling out at the same time, we quickly learned that you have to be very cognizant of the taxi service in Athens, because those taxi drivers will charge whatever they feel like. So you have to be very aware of the taxi service. So if you can arrange for your own transportation out of the Athens cruise port, whether it be a private transfer or the cruise line shuttles that you can take to the airport, if there's a mode of transportation that you can pre-arrange in advance, I would highly recommend that, as opposed to just jumping in the taxi line and grabbing the first available taxi, because they will pick whatever fare they want to get you to the hotels that are in the Athens city center.
Great. Luke, did you have anything else to add?
No, I thought I did, but I think Matt pretty well summed up a few things.
Okay, perfect. So my next question for you guys, for all of you, are what are some of the unique experiential or niche cruises that people should be considering? So moving away from those contemporary lines, is there anything that's sort of standing out to you right now that people should take a look at? Maybe we'll start with Karen this time, and then we can go Luke and Matt.
So my answer is not really a cruise line specifically, but I'm thinking about those extra cruise tours that we hear a lot about. So if you're thinking about Alaska, which is a popular request right now, don't just think about the cruise. Think about the cruise tour as well, which can either be bolted onto the beginning or end of your trip. So if you're doing, say, a northbound voyage, you can actually do your cruise first and then do a couple of extra days in the hotel. Go to see Denali, go to see Fairbanks. Those areas that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get by water. So I would say that's a unique experience that if you really want to see Alaska, that's a great add-on to consider.
Great. Luke?
Niche. I think if I look back to the presentation of Embarkation ports, is, maybe take advantage of the area around the embarkation point, not necessarily maybe, if you're looking at Athens, Greece, for instance, as an embarkation point, you may want to look at maybe visiting somewhere that's not too far, that you could probably just take the train and go from another country that's close by and experience that, not necessarily go to Athens, because obviously if you're in a cruise port, as many of you know, that sometimes there's people are a little frustrated with the amount of influx of people in certain cities, particularly a cruise port. They seem to target the finger to a specific cruise port or a group of cruise ports that are really busy. But in general, is maybe look at other areas around that to take advantage of visiting those areas. If you're going to Rome, for instance, maybe visit the northern part of Italy, and then make your way into Rome and sail out of Rome. Or there's Amsterdam. There's various places in Netherlands that you can actually visit. There's you can go to Brussels. You can go to Copenhagen. You can go to different places that aren't too far, that you could easily take the train or a quick flight over back to Amsterdam to get on your ship. So venture, try something new in the area. Even if you've sailed out of that port before, try something new, and then still sail out of that same port, but it's trying new destinations.
Great. And Matt?
I would say for me, for niche, I would say, I like the idea of these intensive voyages which focus on one specific area. Just being able to talk to Karen the one time where she kind of really made me aware of Azamara and how they do these intensive voyages where they find that location that you're looking to go to, and that they fixate on that area and hit a bunch of different ports in that one area. So you can really, like, I want to go to Croatia, but because I've never been there. But, some of these other voyages, they only kind of touch on maybe one or two ports, and then boom, you're out of there and you're hitting a bunch of different countries. But you don't feel like you've gotten the full experience. So you want one of those intensive voyages. So I use Azamara as an example, but I mean, there are several cruise lines that offer these opportunities where I want to see a lot of Italy. So there are a multiple ports on a very specific cruise that just hits Italy or Croatia or Japan, or, like these ones that are very specific on those intensive voyages that focus on those particular spots. Celebrity just came out one that is Iceland specific. So it's a 7-night, but it is all Iceland. Or you see the Norway cruises. These are those very specific itineraries that focus on one particular area so that you really get that intensive voyage that you're looking for to focus on one specific destination.
Amazing. So we had a comment from Mike, and he says, "I really like your webinars. However, I have to say that it would be nice too if you would consider budgets as well. The cruise by itself are already crazy expensive, and adding a couple of days before and after the cruise would cost at least another 800. Just needed to mention that." And that leads into my other question for you guys, which is, what are some strategies that you recommend to maximize your budget? So we'll start with Luke, we'll go to Matt, and then we'll pop over to Karen. And then after that, we have a question from Mary.
Well, given the fact, well, I touched on it. So if you look at ports like Cape Canaveral, Cape Liberty, New York, Boston, Quebec City, for instance, if you live on the east coast of Canada, Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes, to save on flights, because flights can actually add up. Sometimes, I have clients now that they want to go to Fort Lauderdale for March break to realize that, wait a second, the flights are more than the cruise itself. So my recommendation is look for a closer port, a port that you could drive to. Like for me, when I leave just south of Ottawa and I drive to Cape Liberty, 6.5 hours. In October, we drove to Baltimore. It was 7.5 hours. And so I was able to one, cruise more, because if you save on flights, you take that money and you book another cruise, and you end up having a long list of cruises to do. But yeah, no, fundamentally, if you can look at a cruise port that's close, or even if it was Florida, you pack up the kids, or pack, your wife and yourself, or even friends, you jump in a vehicle, you tag team on driving down, you drive to Florida, you've just spent a couple of $100 in gas versus a couple of $1,000 in flights. That's an option. If you live on the West Coast, well, then, there's always the Seattle or Vancouver to sail from, which, in some cases you'd be able to drive to the port. So first thing is look for cruises that sail from a drivable distance from where you live, and look at that as an option to save a little bit of money.
Great.
Yeah, if I had to touch on budgets, I would talk about just using your travel advisors. So for us, we have the discounted group space. So we're going to be able to save the money that you would spend more on if you were booking from the cruise lines direct. So we're going to save you money there. We can look at the destinations that you want to go to out of peak season. So we can find discounted rates for you, but then we can also look outside of peak season where we can also save you more money there. And then if we want to talk about accommodations, we've secured corporate rates with some of the hotels that are in close proximity to these cruise ports. So if we're talking about Port Canaveral, if we're talking about Fort Lauderdale, if we're talking about Miami, we have secured discounted hotel rates at all of these different venues. So these are opportunities where you can save yourself money on your accommodations. We can save you money on the cruise fare by getting you those discounted rates and looking outside of peak seasons so that we can save you a little bit more, but still get you to the destinations you're wanting to go to. And then when we mention our group spaces, we usually advertise our balconies, because that's the middle tier of what we have available on the cruise lines. You have your suites, you have your balconies, and then we have ocean views and interiors. So we still sometimes have group space in interiors or ocean views. So those are still options for you. So when you're talking to one of the travel advisors and the balcony might be just outside your budget, that doesn't mean that we don't have something else available for you. All you got to do is ask.
So I would agree. I think the timing is really critical. So if you plan ahead, then you get the opportunity to get those discounts and those deals. If you're looking for something that's close to sailing date, it's harder to find those. So we're finding the supply and demand kind of plays into place here, where the fewer cabins that are available, the more expensive they tend to be. So if you've got flexibility with your dates, that is, I think, the best advice. The other thing I would say is, if you're going to be traveling, I find that cruisers tend to travel in packs. So you might book a cruise and then you tell your friends, and then they think about it and then they want to join you. And sometimes that rate is not available anymore because they waited a little too long. So if you are thinking about traveling with friends, let them know right away. Let them think about it and get that good deal, the same thing that you did, because not a week goes by that I don't get a message saying, hey, do you have that deal still? And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. So if if you think you might have some friends who want to tag along with you and try a cruise, get them on board early so that way we can get them the best rates as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've continued to talk about here on this panel is that, unlike maybe all inclusives where people wait till the last minute and like pop onto an all inclusive in Cuba for dirt cheap, that really doesn't happen in the cruises as much. You'll get a few deals close in here and there, but for the most part, you want to book as early as possible. So it's a little shift in mindset for a lot of people, I think, who are new to cruising, myself included, because I certainly was like, ooh, wait till the last minute, get the best deal. It's like, nope, so wrong.
And the other thing I want to touch on, because we talked about exclusive rates, we talked about booking early, but it also sometimes, more often than not lately, I've noticed that we're posting deals with one cabin left, or we're posting a deal that is very a small window of opportunity that maybe, it's kind of like, oh, if you book a balcony, it actually turns out to be cheaper than an actual ocean view or an inside, just because the cruise line is trying to, fill those cabins. So they'll usually drop the price for maybe 24 hours, 48 hours. We don't know usually, but we scope for those deals, those last minute deals. And so if you see one of those deals and the price looks like, oh my God, I've never seen it this low, maybe you should grab it before it's gone, because a lot of times they're not there for very long. And I've actually seen posted deal and, we get a comment a day or two later and we go to look and it's gone, or it's tripled in price, or it's gone back to its regular price. So if you see those deals and it's too hard to resist, then don't resist, just grab it, because it may not be there tomorrow. So.
That's a good one.
Good advice. And so we do have a question from Mary Alice. She's asking, anything we're seeing around Southampton where our Norway cruise leaves from?
There's lots of great stuff around Southampton.
Okay, I don't know who.
Yeah, Southampton's a great spot to
Karen, did you have
embark from. Yes. So, of course, you'll probably be flying into London, which is an incredible city on its own. So definitely spend some time there. And then getting to Southampton is just a short coach ride away. But on your in between London and Southampton, there's actually Stonehenge. So if you haven't seen that, it's definitely worth a visit. It's kind of right smack in the middle of the countryside. So do some sort of tour that would get you from point A to point B, point A being London, and into Southampton. Great hotels. Southampton's a very good walkable city. So if you are staying there overnight for a night or two, definitely, there's great shops, there's restaurants and pubs and all kinds of great stuff that you can see there. So, definitely there's a lot around that area.
I'll second what Karen said.
Luke?
No, I'll second what Karen said. She basically nailed it. So.
Okay. Matt, anything to add to that? Oh, Matt's probably helping a client right now. He's on his phone.
Yeah, I've never been to Southampton, so I unfortunately that one I don't have.
Okay, no worries at all. And Lori just had a comment here, and she said, if going to a faraway cruise, budget the extra day or two into your expenses, because you may never go there again, and it would feel cheated if you missed out. So again, there's vacations, and then there's bucket list vacations, right? So different budgets for different types of vacations, I would say.
And that was my experience with Amsterdam, because Amsterdam, I thought, well, I'm just going to go down the night before. We're going to get on the cruise. We'll do our 11-night British Isles cruise, and we'll get off the ship, go straight to the airport. But then we had friends that said, "Wait a second, you've never been to Amsterdam before?" No, we're going a couple of days early, and it turns out that we actually looked at flights. And the reason we went 6 or 7 days prior is because the flights were cheaper than if we had gone 3 or 2 or the day before the cruise. So it kind of offset that cost, and it covered half of our hotel over the 6 days. So it's kind of, you play around with some dates. Sometimes you can actually save a bit of money that way. But I agree. I am not disappointed of having gone to Amsterdam first, for sure.
Amazing. Matt, anything to add before we hand it back to Karen to wrap up, because we're over time. Lots of chat tonight.
No, I think there's been great questions, great interaction with our guests that have been tuning in tonight. So thank you to everyone for your questions, and always happy to jump on.
Excellent.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. We are going to be back with you again next week for our final cruise chat of the year. So December 18th, we've got some fun topics lined up for you for that, and we'll be announcing what that is very shortly. We are cruise deals for vacations for Canadians, and our website being vacationsforcanadians.com, which is where you can find all kinds of information on the deals we've posted, as well as deals that we have group rates on. Of course, you can call us or email us at any time if you've got something in mind that you'd like us to research for you. We'd love to work with you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.
And before we pop off, I just wanted to say happy anniversary to Matt and his wife, because he is here working hard and giving the answers. But maybe that's why he wore the fancy jacket. Maybe he's got some big plans coming up. So happy anniversary, Matt.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, this is my anniversary wear.
All right. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Good night.